Hey guys, well, welcome back to this week's episode of the American Landman. You know, it's that time of the year right now, and I'm listing a lot of properties, and I rarely get a day just to be in my barn, take care of my equipment, and check the oil and do this kind of stuff. But today I thought I'd talk about kind of a timely topic because I'm getting a lot of calls from sellers ready to list their property. And listing a property is not like doing a residential sale. When you have an asset as large and as coveted as the family farm or the hunting parcel that you have been passed down from generations and maybe it's time to sell it, there's a lot of steps and you want to make sure you make the right decisions and get the right process and finally the right agent. So we're going to talk about that, listing your property, today's episode of the American Landman. Okay, well, you guys have probably heard that the market is about as hot as you possibly can have right now. There are more buyers in the market than I've ever seen, and they're paying higher dollar for the land than any time in the 7 years that I've been selling for Whitetail Properties real estate and the 30-some years that I've been actually buying and selling property. In previous episodes, we kind of talked about some of the pricing strategy and in Northwest Wisconsin in my area. So we're not going to really dive into that today. But what I want to talk about is kind of setting yourself up for success, because even though the market is so hot right now, there are properties that are sitting on the market for a long time. Just recently, and hopefully very soon, I'll be bringing a property to market that has been on the market as a for sale by owner for over 2 years. It hasn't sold for a lot of reasons, and we're going to talk about that today. I want to talk about how to set yourself up for success when you're going to list a property. So let's start with that. Okay, it probably goes without saying that if you're selling a Ferrari, you're going to get a Ferrari salesman. If you're going to sell a home, you're going to get a residential real estate agent. And if you're going to sell land, find a land specialist. So we're not going to get into that. We've kind of talked about that many times. But setting up yourself for success at the front end of your sale is so important. And these are some of the things that you're going to need to pull together so that you're kind of on front of the wave when it comes with all the buyers that are going to come and look at your property. Because the goal here is probably to get an offer within 60 to 90 days and have that property closed within 6 months. Anything longer than that, the market starts to get a little stagnant. Your property gets a little stagnant on the market. People start to think maybe something's wrong with it, and then the lowball offers start coming in. So you don't want to do that. So this is what you want to do. When you decide to list your property, the first thing you can pull together is see if you can find your abstract. The abstract is basically the history of your property, all the owners. You're going to want to have that because when you do get an offer, you're going to want to be able to provide that to the title company. Otherwise they're going to go looking for it at the courthouse. You can actually save yourself a little bit of money in the process. The next thing is you're going to want to map the property. Now, any agent that's out there selling land more than likely has access to many tools, and I've highlighted some here. As an example, MapRight is a common use mapping software that we use in the land industry. What I like about it is I can lay an overlay over the property, outline it in yellow. I can lay in layers such as topography, water, wetland, and I can generally represent what I am selling. Now, oftentimes the acreage that is on the MapRight map and the county GIS we go to, as an example, in St. Croix County, WGExtreme.com. It gives me the taxes and the acreage, and a lot of times those don't match. So I don't put a lot of stock in the MapRight and the outline. They're getting data from someplace, but a lot of times it may not match up with the taxes. So you always want to focus on the taxes. That's what we're going to represent. We're going to identify that parcel as 40 acres or 200 acres, whatever, plus minus, because we don't know exactly unless we have a survey, and we're going to get to that. And PID number, property identification number, or property identification number, PIN. So PID, PIN kind of used interchangeably. That identifies the property that we're actually going to be selling. So get us some mapping software, go to WG Extreme in my state, maybe you have something similar in yours, and get those documents to know what you're dealing with and create some maps. The buyers are going to want to know maps. Secondly is you can use evaluation tools like Acre Value Pro as an example. Acre Value Pro is a software that I use that analyzes farms, and it will take all the farm sales all around the area. It'll look at fertility rates, it'll look at soils. It's a lot of measurement indices that go along with selling a farm. And it will actually predict the average price per acre in that county. It's an invaluable tool, and if you're selling farmland or if you have farmland to sell, that's a great starting point so that when you start pricing your properties and comparing it to comps that you find on the multiple listing service, the MLS, you've kind of got a little barometer just to see if the guys that are selling land in the area, who may not be real estate agents that are skilled at selling land, they might be more residential, did they price them well? The last place is to go to the MLS. If you have an agent and you can get them to go in and do a competitive market analysis, you can see what is sold. I recently did this for a client. I took Buffalo County, I chose a town, and I took a 10-mile radius around that, and I narrowed it down with some details such as waterfront or no waterfront, acreage, large parcels, and I put in a couple other things in there, and it spit out 2 comps. Then I opened them up, I looked at them, and I found, well, they were around $1 million sale and a $1.3 million sale. It gives me how many days it was on the market, and I can see a few pictures. A lot of times on the MLS, though, because the agents that are selling the properties aren't land specialists and they don't have all these fancy tools, there's not many photos, so it's really hard to tell a lot of times, but the MLS can be a source. If you don't have MLS, you can always go to sites like Zillow, Trulia, whatever real estate company is in your area, and look it up and just start to kind of go through it manually and start to look at properties that are listed, and hopefully you can find sales. Sales are the key. A listed property might be where you're going to put it, but the sale is where you need to know. And you maybe list at 5 to 8% and hope to sell 3 to 5% from that number. So if you do those 3 or 4 things prior to putting the property on the market, you're going to be way ahead when it comes time to get an offer. Okay, next I want to talk about getting an appraisal. Appraisals are common in real estate. We've all heard about them, right? You pay a guy a couple $1,000, he comes out to your neighborhood and he appraises your home, and he looks 3 or 4 comps in the neighborhood because there's 15, 20, 25, maybe 50 homes that have sold in the last couple years right around you. But when you're selling land and you're looking at land as a very unique property, very unique product, there might not be comps at all. And I'm going to argue that appraisals aren't always helpful. If you want to pay the money, it's not to say that appraiser might find some somewhat similar properties, but go through the countryside and look for yourself. Have you ever seen exact homes by the same builder, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage, 2,400 square feet? No, you don't get that with land. You get buildings and they're in different states of repair. You get more tillable or less tillable. You get more woods or less woods. You get high quality woods, low quality woods, high quality tillable land, low quality, you get the idea. They're very unique, so appraisals aren't always helpful. They can be a good start, but they're not always helpful. Unfortunately, when you go to sell a property, the bank is almost always going to get an appraisal. So when one is handed to you, make sure you look it over well. And if you need to contest it because it's not accurate to what you're selling, you need to do that. Appraisals, I'm 50-50 on them whether you should have one or not. Most of my deals don't have an appraisal going in. Okay, so you found your agent and you're getting ready to sell. Now's the time to fill out those documents, and there are a lot of them. Everything starts with a listing document. When I go out to sit down with somebody or I send a listing document to them, I'm going to put on the address, but it might not have an address if it's just land. In that case, I'm going to identify as XX 135th Street in Section 34, the town of Hay River, Dunn County, Wisconsin. And then down further in the additional provisions, I will put in there, this listing is for 200 acres plus minus with the following PID numbers. And that's how we identify it. That's very important to identify it very accurately with those PID numbers, because when they transfer the ownership at the title company, that's how they're going to identify it as well. So make sure you get those numbers, have it very accurate. Other things that are in that listing are what's included in the listing that goes with the sale. Do tree stands and box blinds? Is there equipment? Is there tractors and combines and whatever that might be personal equipment that's not part of the land but maybe goes with the sale? Me personally, when I do these types of sales, I'd rather do it somewhat simple. I would like you to sell those things at a separate sale. I'm just going to sell the land itself. But if you want to go with a deal, then you're going to have to make a very detailed list. Now, some buyers are very detailed and some buyers are not detailed at all. Generally, what I tell people is before we get this marketed, before the first person comes out on the land, take everything down. Typically, I'm dealing with tree stands and box blinds, hunting improvements. Go get them off the property, go remove them, they don't go with the deal. Or leave them out there as a value add. You might actually get a buyer quicker, but it doesn't add a lot to the sale. So identifying what's included and not included is important in the process. Make sure you identify it and outline it very clearly. Okay, the next step is marketing. This is probably my favorite part of the entire process. I get to go explore your land. I've got carte blanche to go out there and go anywhere and do whatever I need to explore that property, and I will go in it. I will dive into that property and I'll crawl through swamps if I have to. But knowing the property, the agent that you hire, knowing the property is so key to a proper sale, because there's a major difference between listing a property and selling a property. And what do I mean by that? Well, listing a property is simple as getting some basic information, put it on the MLS, somebody will stumble across it, they'll give the agent a call and say, hey, I'm interested in this property, I'd like to go look at it. And they'll say, yeah, go ahead and walk around, it's just land after all. And you go out there and you walk around. Well, you could be charged with trespassing, so don't do that. Work with an agent that actually has been on the property. When they go out there, what I do is I photograph that property from every angle. I'm flying my drone, I'm on the ground, I'm looking at the flora, I'm looking at the fauna, I'm photographing butterflies, I'm photographing deer, I'm looking for deer trails, I'm hanging deer cameras, I'm looking at tree species and plant species, old homesteads, places you can build, places that could be food plots, trails, ridges, pinch points, entry points. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. The point is that a good agent is going to know your property extremely well. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow them to sell the property. When a buyer calls me up, and what I do is I ask them, well, what are you looking for? What's your budget? How do you hunt? What do you want to do with the property? Do you want to farm? What are you looking for? And then mentally or on the computer, I'm going through our website and I'm looking for properties and narrowing it down. Even if they've called me about a property they've seen advertised, it may not be the one that fits them. A good salesperson will sell your property to the right persons. They're not wasting your time or theirs. So often, salespeople, agents do not qualify their buyers. They just set up a showing and they get them in the process, and you get dislodged from your property if you're maybe living there, or you have people walking around your property if you're a hunter and you don't really want that. As we're getting closer to deer season, you want it quiet. You want to qualify these people and you want to sell the property to the right buyer, not just list it and show it to any buyer. Hope that makes some sense. Okay, so marketing. Well, I take many angles here. I like to fly my drone. I'm a certified drone pilot and I sell land. So I know what I'm looking for. The average guy that has a drone can go and fly your property, surely can. There's a lot of agents that are selling homes that are flying drones these days. It's not uncommon. But when they fly that drone, do they know what to look for? Do they know what to highlight? Do they know land? Do they know land buyers? Do they know what's important and what you want as a buyer if you're looking for a property to purchase? Those are the key things. Personally, a drone for me is just another eye. It gives me an opportunity to fly above that property very slowly across it, focus on different aspects, take some still photos and take some video and kind of pre-scout the property, especially the smaller properties where I can stand in one side of it and fly it and look for the access routes, look for entry and exit points, look for around the property, the water features, the tillable land, the crops that they're planting, funnels that are good hunting attributes, power line easements, gas easements, all these things. Flying a drone these days almost a must, in my opinion, when you're listing land, because people are so visual, and you're going to find that you're going to get so much more time on your listing where they actually view it. And our website, I know that my listings are viewed on average 3 to 4 minutes, where if I can get, most agents, if you can get 10 to 15 seconds on Trulia or one of those apps where just flipping through it, you're lucky. So having highly visual with multimedia listings is so important to a proper listing. And if you're not getting that from your agent, you're not getting everything out of your agent. Okay, so you're coming around the last corner. you got an interested buyer, you think they're qualified, you got to provide them with a couple bits of information that are common to real estate deals. Those are the managed forest disclosure, if you're in Wisconsin and you have a managed forest program, or in your state where there's something very similar. You want to give them the wetland disclosures. It's very important that people nowadays, because the DNR has almost zero humor when it comes to destroying wetlands. I always provide a wetland disclosure. A vacant land disclosure. Every seller that I list does a vacant land disclosure, unless it's an estate and you've never lived there. There are ways to not have to fill it out. But a vacant land disclosure is going to disclose everything about that property that the owner knows. And if you're a seller, you want to be very thorough on that. Don't just gloss over that. I can't coach you. I'm going to tell you, take your time. It's 6 or 7 pages long. There's a lot of questions, but it's so important because you don't want your buyer coming back later on and say, hey, you didn't tell me about that chemical dump that's back in the coulee where they've been throwing, atrazine barrels in there for decades. That's a problem. I need that cleaned out. And trust me, folks, I've seen it happen. People did not disclose those things. The buyer bought the property and it was all grown up like a jungle. And then in the fall or winter, when the foliage came down, they discovered this stuff and they came back and they made the seller and the agent pay for the removal. So disclosing these things are so important. And last but not least, if you've got a farm home that is listed or was built pre-1978, and many of these old farm homes they were built around the turn of the century, lead-based paint. You could have a lead-based paint issue in that house, but there's a disclosure for that. All you got to do is disclose it. They may ask you to mitigate the problem. They may just say, well, buy it as is. I'm telling you that the issue's there. So those types of disclosures are so important, and having an agent that understands that the nuances of selling land and farms is really key. Make sure you get the right disclosures to your buyer. Okay, so we've disclosed, we've marketed, we got an offer. It's time for the offer to purchase. Normally, when I sell properties, probably 95% of the time, I'm handling both sides of the deal. It's called multiple representation, but I don't have a buyer agency agreement with the buyer most often. So I'm working on behalf of the seller, but I'm representing the buyer. Now, some people may feel that's unethical. I actually feel that it's an advantage because I'm extremely ethical, I'm extremely honest, and I know these properties better than anybody. And I just feel a duty to my buyer customers to do a great job for them. I'm going to tell them everything I can about that property. It's just better to be above board on all aspects of the sale, and that's how we do it. And I tell you what, folks, knock on wood, I haven't had any problems in hundreds and hundreds of transactions over the last almost decade. Not one. Do the right thing, tell, disclose, just do a good job and it won't be a problem. The buyer writes that offer. I'm going to give you a call as a seller, and I'm usually going to call you on the phone and I'm going to read that offer to purchase to you. Then I'm going to send it to you in a PDF format because most people I'm dealing with are 65 to 85. They want to download, print it off, and look at it, and they go through line by line, and then they give me a call and they say, hey, line 217, additional provisions. What did it mean not included personal items? And I explain, well, the tree stands or that old combine, whatever. Go through it line by line by line. Once you get a consensus that you're ready to go, you either accept, reject, or counter. Those are topics for future, but just know that most of the time, 1 or 2 counters back and forth is all it takes to get a deal, and that's what you want to do. You don't want to drag this out forever. I know when I make offers, and before I even bring it to you as a seller, I'm going to talk to the buyers. I'm going to say, hey, look, I priced this well. This is how I got to the pricing. I looked at cost per acre, square foot, and I put a number on the house, $150 a square foot times 2,400 square feet of the house, and the outbuildings are valued at $50,000. I added it all up. There was the price. You offered this. We are in the ballpark. And there's not a lot of negotiation. So if your selling agent or buying agent does a good job, you should get done pretty quick with 1 or 2 counters and you got a deal. After that, we go to the closing. The title company does a title search. There's some documents that we talked about. You can provide them to make it easy. And then you show up on the day of close and you got a deal. There's a lot of steps in this process, folks. I went over a lot of things, almost too much to video because I can't even remember everything I want to talk about when I do these videos. But if you're interested, then give me a call. I'll walk you through it. You can send me some comments on here, and please, if you don't mind, hit that like button, tell everybody else about this video, subscribe, and as always, guys, thanks for watching. You've been watching Neil Hauger. I'm a land specialist with Whitetail Properties Real Estate, and this is the American Landman.